What's good, family? It's your favorite cousin back again. This time with episode 14 of Rich Talks. And today we're going to talk about the weight of expectations. Yes, the weight of expectations. How expectations shape us, mold us. The heavy burden of having expectations placed upon us, whether it be the expectation we place upon ourselves or the ones that the closest loved ones to us place upon us or society places upon us. Yes, the weight of expectation, how it shapes, how it molds us. You know, from a young age, you have expectations. Starting as a kid, you're expected to, go to school. Well, I guess majority of us, you had expectations to go to school, graduate, go to college, get a good job. The American dream. That's what's expected of you. And a lot of times, even that expectation of the basic life of, one could have, that is quote unquote, I guess, best for them, as people may say. Oh, this is what's best for you. Those expectations weigh heavily on somebody. And a lot of times, the reason why those expectations weigh heavy is because that's not that person's life path. See, a lot of these expectations that we place upon people or that are placed upon people, especially from society, is cookie cutter. Meaning it's the same mold that is placed upon you, and everything that doesn't fit in that mold is to go. It's the same thing. But what if all that extra that's cut away, that's not being placed into that cookie mold, I would say. What if all that extra, that's what makes you you? What if all that extra is what, is what's needed for you on your journey? That's the difference. That's what makes you you. But you take all that away when you fall into the mode of expectations. When you fall into the mode of just, the basics of expectations as a child, of going to school, get a good job, start a family, da 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 da. What if all the extra that was cut away from those expectations, what if that was for you to start your own job, start your own this, start your own that? Or just, go down a different life path? See, expectations that we place upon people are heavy. And depending on what type of cultures you may be raised in, depending on what type of cultures you may be raised in, those expectations to be a certain way weigh heavily. Even if, say for instance, you're you're in the black culture, hip hop culture, black community, not even just hip hop, just black community period. You have certain expectations placed upon you. You know how you should vote, how you should carry yourself or conduct yourself in public, how you should marry. When you're a part of the black community, it's just, for instance, because from the outside looking in, one would say I was a part of the black community or am a part of the black community. So the expectations that was placed upon me for being in the black community goes such as dating and marrying in your race, no interracial marriage. That's what an expectation is placed upon you when you are a part of, or you claim part of, said society structure or culture. So it would be, if she can't use your comb, don't bring her home. Vote Democrat. The expectations to enjoy certain food like soul food, fried chicken, collard greens, chitlins, cornbread, macaroni, certain movies, certain, music, certain ways of walking and talking, acting, or behaving. All these expectations that's placed upon you if you are in said community or in the quote unquote black community. And this is just an example. It goes different for every community, but this is just what I'm a part of that I can explain to you. So now if you don't live up to these expectations of voting a certain way, dating or marrying a certain way, your diet a certain way, or being able to include certain things in your diet or not eating certain things in your diet, all those things weigh heavy upon the expectations of being in this community. And if you don't live up to these expectations, what happens? They start to ostracize you. You date or marry outside of your race, they ostracize you because you didn't live up to the expectation of, marrying inside of your race. Or you choosing an alternative way to vote. You vote Republican or you vote or you vote Republican or you vote Independent or you don't vote at all. So now you get ostracized for not living up to the expectations because you don't want to carry that burden, that weight of fitting into the expectations of someone else that's been placed upon you just for their approval. Or eating a certain way, saying you're not going to eat these particular foods just to fit in, just to live up to these expectations that you have when they don't fit your ideal, your personal ideal of what you should be putting into your body. Again, like I said, all these expectations that's been put upon us just for the approval of someone else, these expectations weigh heavy. All these expectations all these expectations are nothing but burdens that's placed upon you. Now you have to carry these burdens for someone else's approval. This causes stress. Haven't you noticed, kids who are like between the ages of like 16 to 24, that's a crucial period. Because in this crucial period of kids being 16 to 24, they undergo a lot of stress, especially if they are in certain environments, Let's say, for instance, their parents have certain expectations for the kids to have certain grades, go to certain schools, have certain careers, all these things. These expectations that have been put upon these kids to get straight A's and go to these Ivy League schools or these great schools and have these great majors and all this. This is not for these people. This is for what these parents think that the kids need, number one. And number two, a lot of times this is for the parents to be approved by other parents in society that they've done a good job as being a parent, or for their own approval of saying that they've done a good job as being a parent because their kids have been approved to another school or a fancy institution of higher learning, or your kids have majored in this phenomenal degree. But what does it all mean? Just for someone else's approval to say you've done a good job, or your approval to say you've done a good job? But that's for you, not this person. What does this person need? See, we highly forget all the time when we place these expectations and burdens on people, we forget what is it that this person needs. We forget that these are actual people. So, your child gets into these Ivy League schools, and this is going about the crucial period between 16 and 24. So now the kid is undergoing stress because now they have to score high. If they're in the 16 to 18 range, still in high school, now they have to score high on all these tests, apply to all these schools, stay up late night, study, undergo all this stress, carrying all these burdens that a kid is carrying when they should be thinking about other things, going down the path, using their energy, their youthfulness, and this energy that they have to move their life forward in the way that they see fit, because this is their life. It's cool to give people guidance, but don't put expectations on them that's heavy for them to carry. But I digress. So, the 16 to 18 range, They're still in high school trying to get their life together, but you place these burdens of them scoring high on these tests, getting into these Ivy League or high these Ivy League schools or these great universities, for lack of better. You place all this stress and burden upon them for what? Like I said, just to say that you did a good job as a parent. In a way, it's almost narcissistic. Placing the expectations upon someone like that, it's almost narcissistic. Because you're placing your approval and what you expect out of someone for your happiness, for your benefit, to make you feel good, and not necessarily what's good for this other person. But like I said, back to this person who's 16 and 18, so they undergo all this stress about tests and all this stuff. Now that begins the turmoil. That begins the resentment. So you've had kids from other cultures, Asian parents or African parents or parents from the Middle East or whatever, that heavy burden that's placed upon these kids to score high and all this stuff. That's why they wild out when when they finally get out of the house. Because that expectation of them to behave a certain way has released. And now it's like a bottle that's been shaken. Now they get to explode and really be who they somewhat are. But they still have this expectation of them from 19 to 24 of what? Graduating. Not just graduating, but graduating top of class. Landing a good job. And now finding that one, your opposite, that you can bring home. Not what's best for you, but what you can bring home to satisfy parents. You see, your whole life has been expectations. And you're just at 24. You see? This is why people get burnt out at 25, 26, 27 and become robots. Because they've lived so much of what the people around them, the expectations that have been placed upon them, they've been so stressed that after a while they either burn out or they just fully feed in and become a robot. This is why people don't like the people they're married to. Why? Because they didn't marry them because they loved them or they liked them or they cared about them or they were to help them or anything. No. They married them because it fit into the society or fit into the expectations of what they were supposed to marry. Being a part of this culture, you have to marry somebody like this, how you're supposed to bring them home, da 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 da. But what if this person's not for you? Now you marry somebody based off the expectations of what's been placed upon you, not what's good for you. Now you're not fulfilled, you're not happy. So now who's in benefit? The people around you. Yeah, they may benefit because it fits into their mode of what they said that it should be. But you're ultimately lacking, and you're the one who has to live this life, not them. The weight of expectations, the burdens that we carry for someone else. These burdens are not ours to carry. Apologies, I had to write that down. The title of this video. All these expectations about what success looks like. And ultimately, success is what you make it. Success is what you deem success. If you woke up today and you didn't have one negative thought, that was success. Not that you woke up and made $1,000 and you walked 15,000 steps and you didn't have no liquor coffee and you didn't take a nap and you got 4 hours of sleep and you got 10 leads today. That's not success. If you deem it success, yes, cool. But if someone told you that's what success is, that's not success. Success is what you make it. What makes you feel accomplished once you're done with that task. That's what success is. It's not what someone else tells you. Because ultimately, this person is telling you what success is because it fits into their mode of what success is. And it's either to move their philosophy forward, or it's to make them happy. But it's not for you and your benefit. And maybe it is for what they think your benefit. But ultimately, only you know what is for your benefit. And that's when you tap into yourself. The weight of expectations. The only expectations that should be weighed heavily upon you are the ones that you have decided to place upon you to get you to your goals, get you to your desires of what you expect out of your life. Now, if people around you have said this could be your expectations or they expect this out of you, and you validated it and you said, okay, I can live with that. This is something that can move me forward. Cool. But if the expectations that have been placed upon you doesn't necessarily move you forward, how you see fit and how you meditate and how God has talked to you, you talk to God about it. If these things don't move you forward, it's nothing but a burden. And that burden is ultimately something that's going to weigh you down. Like I said, these burdens are not for you to carry. These burdens to make someone else happy. This weight of expectations, these aren't yours. Like I said, a lot of times these expectations that have been placed upon us is not for our benefit. It's for other people. And we spend our whole lives to make the expectations of someone else just for their approval. And I feel passionate about this because I've lived somewhat of my life for someone's expectations. You know, a younger part of my life for someone's expectations. For their approval to make them happy. And when it wasn't, and when I couldn't accomplish the goal that I wanted to accomplish for that expectation, it hurt me twice because number one, I didn't get the desired outcome, which set me back in a sense. And number two, the person that I wanted to get the approval of, I ultimately did not get the approval of because I didn't accomplish the goal in the form and matter that that person wanted it to. So now, what happens? I find myself in a position of not regret, not doubt, but upset, unaccomplished, unhappy. Why? Why did I find myself in a position of upset, unaccomplished, unhappy? Almost depressed. Why? Because I tried to live for the expectations that was placed upon me for someone else's approval and not my own approval, to make someone else happy. And ultimately, we both lost, or ultimately, nothing happened. Ultimately, it was a downfall. Ultimately, it was a loss. Well, it was a win because I learned my lesson of doing things out of expectations of others. So I ultimately learned the lesson. So ultimately, a win. But in that time, the outcome of that said situation was a loss. Or it wasn't as desired as it could have been. Or the outcome did not come out as desired. And from then, I've learned you can't go out of your way to live based on someone's expectations because you're carrying a burden that's not yours. And ultimately, you're living for someone else's approval to either keep them in your life, or to keep you happy, or because either you feel like you owe it to them, or whatever the case may be. So if you're living with expectations that's been placed upon you, listen to this. If someone's placed expectations upon you, or if you're living for the approval of someone, to meet their expectations. Don't do that. Live for you. And if these people are supposed to be in your life, if these people are supposed to love you unconditionally, this is where unconditional love comes in, because if you're not living to their expectations, they still unconditionally love you. So if you're not around people who unconditionally love you, especially while you're embarking on your own life and not living up to the expectations that others have put upon you, you're in a good position. Again, if you're around people who unconditionally love you and not placing certain expectations upon you of how you should live your life or the direction you should live your life, not they're putting expectations of you to have integrity, be a good person, be loyal, not those things, but like how you should live, the direction that your life goes. There's certain way, there's certain things that dictate, who you are as a person, your career, your job, who you marry, how you live, all these things. If these people are not putting certain expectations on you on how you should live or move in those situations, if they unconditionally love you and not forcing you, these are the people to be around. Where the people's love is conditioned based on, who you marry, where you go to church, how you live. If people's love, respect, admiration is conditional to all these things, these are not the relationships to be in or even cater to. Unless it's like close family where, you somewhat have to, in a sense, but you treat them at a distance. But other than that, these are not the relationships to tend to, because it's superficial. That's what a lot of this boils down to, is that these relationships and these things that we, that we're a part of for these expectations, it's all superficial. Again, not like the expectation of, just having proper health, loyalty, respect, integrity, certain things that's good for you as a human being. In order to keep your life and function, and healthy. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about, the borderline superficial stuff. Those expectations. That's not healthy. Those things aren't healthy. It adds stress. Water break. It adds stress. Why do you think you see people who've been doctors who are 35, 40 recently, within the past 3 years, either right before the pandemic or during the pandemic, right after, around that period, around maybe 2018, 2019. And there was a shift going on. And you had people who were doctors just quitting, randomly just quitting. People, doctors quitting, becoming Starbucks baristas and having roommates. And you ask yourself, why would you quit being a doctor to go work at Starbucks and have a roommate? This makes no sense. From the outside looking in, this makes no sense. I tell you, it makes complete sense. Why? I'll tell you why. Because these people didn't want to be doctors. These people probably ultimately lived up to the expectations that was placed upon them by their parents. They said, hey, you must be a doctor. You want my approval? You must be a doctor. And it's worse when you come from environments where you've been catered to your whole life, where you've been financially catered to. So now this is the carrot that's been dangled upon your head. You must be a doctor if you want me to still financially support you. So what do people do? Or kids do? Say, okay. They get down, they lay down. So they become this doctor. Everybody's happy. Yay, my child's a doctor. Woo! Not knowing the stress that this person has gone through for the past 8 years, 10 years of staying up late night studying and studying and studying and studying and pressures and all this stress to become a doctor. There's nothing wrong with being a doctor if you want to be a doctor. But all this stress, all this that's been placed upon them to be a doctor for someone else. Now they're performing these tasks as being a doctor. Now they're finally a doctor. They've incurred the debt. But now they're a doctor. They got all these responsibilities. Who's even said that they even paid attention to class? They just wanted to pass the class to make somebody happy. But who's to even say that they learned the material, the information properly? Who's to say they're even healing people properly? You know? They just want to fit the mold of what was placed upon them. So now they're a doctor. Everybody's happy. They're getting approval of everybody. Yay, woo! But they forgot the approval of the most important person, themselves. So now what do? Something in life happens. They either get burnt out, stressed out, something happens. To now where they're like, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. This stress is not worth it. They feel unhappy, unfulfilled. So what do? They quit. They leave it all behind. They go do something that fulfills them. Or something, in the meantime, so they can start their journey to fulfillment. Look it up. It's a bunch of people who were doctors and had all these high prestigious careers and things of that sort. Well, prestigious to the eye of the man. Human. But had all these prestigious careers and all these things. And what happened? They quit. They didn't like the weight that they was carrying. It wasn't theirs to carry. They were carrying it for someone else. So now these people become a Starbucks barista, making $17, $18 an hour. Have a roommate, no longer driving a Mercedes, driving a Honda. But they're happy. Now you have to ask yourself, isn't that the life? From the outside looking in, the people who place those expectations upon them of being a doctor, they would say, oh, you're crazy. But are they really crazy? When they can go to sleep at night? Comfortable? Granted, the environment may not be as comfortable as it once was, but mentally comfort. Is it mental comfort better than physical comfort? And now from this space that they're in, they're able to manifest more because they're not coming from a place of lack or a place of stress. They're actually coming from a place of abundance. The abundance is the abundance of peace, the abundance of happiness. These expectations, they're not our burdens. Like I said, ultimately that's what expectations turn into, burdens. They're not ours to carry. They're not ours to carry at all. They're just an anchor that holds you down from what you're truly supposed to be. And I said these expectations that have been placed upon us is what moves society. Is what the powers that be have been placed upon to keep society moving for them to benefit off of. But it's never for your benefit. It never is. Even when it may sound good, it never is. Now, advice or someone mentioning, hey, I think you'll be good at this, that's different than someone just telling you, I think you should be a lawyer. Or I think you should be an accountant. Just because, it looks good or sounds good. Just because something looks good and sounds good is not the reason to do something. Think about all the people who are in a relationship or a marriage because it looked good and sounded good. But ultimately, it's not what they wanted. Even the person that they married, because that person looked good or it sounded good to be married to this person. It looked good to be married to this person. It sounded good to be married to this person. It looked good to bring this person around your family. It sounded good to say you're married to this type of person or you're in this type of relationship. It looks good, it sounds good to everybody else because now you're fitting the mold of the expectations. You're fitting the expectations that was placed upon you by everybody else, by society, by everybody. So yeah, it looks good on the outside, but in the inside, are you fulfilled? Actually, are you fulfilled? Are you happy? Are you at peace? The answer is no. Why? Because you're living based upon the expectations of everybody else. Now you're not fulfilled in the areas that you need to be fulfilled. So what happens? Turmoil. What happens? Not being connected. What happens? Divorce. Because you got with somebody, you married somebody, you had kids with somebody based off of society, based off of what was placed upon you. You have to marry this type of person. They have to look like this. They have to have this type of job. They have to have this type of background. They have to have this. All these expectations. All these rules, all these things that's been placed upon for who you to marry and who you should date and all this. And none of them says who makes you happy. See, the person who makes you happy, that's not what the expectation is. That's for you. But we're not living for you. When you're living up based upon the expectations that's been placed upon you, that weight of expectation, no. You're supposed to marry somebody who looks good for you. Their job looks good. Their background looks good. Where did they go to school? This. Just so you can fit into certain societies. Just so you can fit in certain social clubs and fit into society and fit into your family group and this and this and this. It's a meme saying, you got to date a girl that you can bring back to the cookout and your aunt can say, or your uncle can say, dang nephew, that's you. Meaning, you have to date somebody who's super, super high on the attractive scale, just to get the approval of your uncle, because this person has said physical beauty standards, or they've reached a certain physical beauty that we've deemed beautiful. Society has deemed beautiful. A 9 or a 10 or a 10 or a dime, a model, whatever you want to call them. You have to bring that person home to get your approval by uncle. But what if you just dating a regular girl next door and she makes you happy? You see? So we don't go after that girl. We don't have to go after the girl who may not be the dime, the 10, the supermodel, the bad bitch. We don't date, we date those people. We cater to those people because it makes us look good in society. It makes us look good around the family. We get approval of aunt. But does that person fulfill you? Does that person make you happy? Can you have a conversation with this person? It breaks down that simple. The weight of expectations. Good talk. Hope this helps somebody. This your favorite cousin. This episode 14 of Rich Talks. Y'all be safe. Love and blessings.